So I wanted to go over a couple of things here. Two ideas that I have are the spectrum of credibility, and the other idea is the credibility clock. And I like going through these because it kind of helps to explain how time and money influence the credibility of information. And, understanding what goes behind the reputation and credibility of information sources might even help you as you go through and try to make your case in an informative or an argumentative speech. You can really espouse the credibility of your information, and that can bolster the legitimacy of your argument. So I'll just open this guy up a bit more so you can see him fully. So in this idea of the spectrum of credibility that we have here, what we're kind of looking at is how information is organized, and this is mostly in the online environment. There's three aspects to the spectrum. There's a less credible and a more credible, and then a most credible side. So I've used a couple logos from some, recognizable social media platforms, including like Twitter, Reddit, these post sites, Facebook. A lot of information that circulates in these circles tends to be less credible. That's not to say that information that we find in these sites is not all of it is not credible. Some of it might be good studies and good information that's coming through. But what we tend to see here is that when information is freely accessible, I'm thinking of Wikipedia, where it doesn't cost us anything to access any of the articles. It doesn't cost us anything to contribute to Wikipedia. So I'm representing open access with this padlock, and I'm representing ease of access with a single $sign. Because we don't have to pay to access a lot of this information, what tends to happen is it might become sort of like a free-for-all, where anyone can kind of contribute, anyone can create, and anyone can espouse credibility. And so when we don't have these barriers or gates that come up that help to mitigate how information is circulated and how it's created, that's why I'm lumping a lot of social media sites into less credible and representing it with that single $sign, because they're usually free, and that means a lot of people will access them. And so the ecosystem of these sites tends to not generate really credible academic resources. So if we moved over to the more credible side, what I'm going to look at is the more credible. So I'm looking at things like organizations that are like established news agencies. We're looking at the PBS, Public Broadcasting Service. We're looking at the BBC. We're looking at things that are kind of like Time and the New York Times or the Economist, things like the Wall Street Journal or Politico. We're looking at organizations that have been around for a while and maybe started out as a print periodical or a print newspaper. And I'm representing these with $signs because along with that reputation and established credibility comes expenses. There's usually a CEO at the head of these information organizations. There's employees, and the company has to pay for health insurance. The company usually goes around and hires editors and writers. The writers spend a lot of time researching and investigating before they go to publish. The editors come in and make sure that everything is fact-checked and presentable for their audience. And when we start to get into the more credible domain, reputation and credibility plays a big part, because the credibility of these agencies is connected to the information that they produce, and it takes time and money to create this information. So we see a couple of $signs here, and I'm representing this with a padlock that's locked, but the keys are attached. And this is to kind of illustrate how if you have the discretionary income to subscribe to Time or to the LA Times or to The Economist, then you have access to that credible information. But if you choose not to, or if you don't have the discretionary income to subscribe to these periodicals, and information sources, then you're kind of at a loss for having that delivered. This is also that area where we see some of these articles are made for free, but we only get 2 or 3 of them for free. And then, after a while, the Wall Street Journal says, hey, it's time to create an account with us. You've been reading a lot of our articles for free. We need to make money to pay our writers. So when we start to get into the more credible domain, the fact that agency and reputation is built up, that's a really good sign that the information that we're getting to is more credible. Within the more credible side, we also have, I'm skipping ahead here because I want you to see some real life examples. So along more credible, I've put Forbes, The Economist, Time, and I also wanted to talk about the .orgs. So PBS is a .org, the Red Cross is a .org. If you're looking for information that's credible, a lot of times organizations that have proven that they specialize in an area, they appear on the more credible side too. So as we're looking on the internet, you can kind of see how the domains play into this spectrum too. We have our .coms over on the less credible, some .coms and more .orgs in the more credible, and then we move over into our .edus and our .govs. So when we're thinking about how information is the most credible, at a glance, we can see that .edu sites and .gov sites, they can be really credible. When we get to .edus, scholars, librarians, experts in the fields and researchers are creating research that are published by research institutions or universities. When we get into the .gov, we see gigantic government agencies that spend a lot of time and money conducting research. If we're thinking about the Centers for Disease Control, all of the time and money and taxpayer money that has gone into funding the investigations on COVID. If we think about the Environmental Protection Agency, all of the grant money and the taxpayer money that goes into studying, things like climate change, NASA, the census, understanding how people move through and across borders and between states and socioeconomic backgrounds. These are gigantic studies and gigantic endeavors that take a lot of time and a lot of money. So when we think about .edus, this is where we're finding things in the library, like peer-reviewed studies. And this is also where we can find a lot of statistics that come from government agencies and government research. Okay, so this is that idea of the spectrum of credibility. And I like talking about this because it kind of gives us an idea of how money comes into play in how we understand why information is credible on the internet and in the library. So obviously your professors want you to come to the library because that's where a lot of the most credible information lives.